I never thought I'd see my stepbrother Marcus laughing at my father's funeral. Yet there he was, barely containing his glee, as the lawyer read out the will. My stepmother Victoria's perfectly manicured hand rested on his shoulder, her red lips curved into a triumphant smile. The fact that they could barely wait until my father was in the ground before celebrating made my stomach turn. Regarding Winston Industries and all its subsidiaries, valued at approximately $50 million. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. These are to be transferred in their entirety to Marcus Peterson. Victoria's victory laugh pierced the somber atmosphere of the law office. Oh, darling, it's exactly what your father wanted. She pulled Marcus into a tight embrace while shooting me a look of pure satisfaction. I'm Sarah Winston, 32 years old, and until a week ago, I was the chief operations officer at Winston Industries, the company my father built from nothing. My whole life had been dedicated to learning every aspect of the business, preparing to one day take over. But things changed dramatically when my father married Victoria 6 years ago. I always knew your father would make the right choice, Victoria's voice dripped with false sympathy. After all, Marcus has an MBA from Harvard. What do you have, Sarah? Just that online business degree? I kept my face neutral, though my hands clenched tightly in my lap. My just online degree had come while working 60-hour weeks at the company, learning everything from the ground up. Meanwhile, Marcus had spent his Harvard years partying on my father's dime, barely passing his classes. Sarah, the lawyer's voice cut through my thoughts, your father has left you his personal effects and... He paused, checking the document, his collection of vintage cars. Marcus couldn't contain himself anymore. Cars? That's it. He turned to me, green eyes glinting with malice. Well, I suppose you can always sell them if you need money. Though you better do it quick, you're fired, by the way. Can't have someone so personally invested hanging around the company. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my black dress. Actually, Marcus, there's something you should know. Oh. He raised an eyebrow, still wearing that insufferable smirk. Going to beg for your job? Claim Daddy wouldn't have wanted this. No, I replied calmly, opening my briefcase. I just thought you might want to check who owns the building where Winston Industries is headquartered, and the other 5 properties where our main operations run. The smirk started to fade from Marcus's face. Victoria stepped forward, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. What are you talking about? I pulled out a stack of documents and handed them to the lawyer. These are the property deeds for all 6 buildings that house Winston Industries operations. As you can see, they're owned by Winston Properties LLC, a separate company my father set up 15 years ago. The lawyer adjusted his glasses again, examining the papers. Yes, these appear to be in order. Winston Properties LLC is indeed a separate entity from Winston Industries. And who, I asked quietly, is listed as the owner of Winston Properties LLC? The lawyer's eyes scanned the document. According to these papers, you are Ms. Winston. Your father transferred full ownership to you 5 years ago. The color drained from Marcus's face. Victoria grabbed the papers, her red nails creasing the edges as she frantically flipped through them. This can't be right. Oh, it's right. And since you're so eager to take control, Marcus, I should inform you that all lease agreements with Winston Properties are up for renewal next month. I'm thinking a 300% increase in rent might be appropriate. Unless, of course, you'd like to relocate 6 major manufacturing and distribution centers on such short notice. Marcus jumped to his feet, his face turning an interesting shade of purple. You can't do this. The company can't afford a 300% rent increase? I finished for him. You're right. It would bankrupt Winston Industries within a year. Funny how things work out, isn't it? Victoria's perfectly made-up face contorted with rage. You planned this with him, didn't you? Got him to sign over the properties before he... Before he what, Victoria? I cut her off sharply. Before he mysteriously started getting sicker and sicker under your careful nursing? Before his mental state began to deteriorate so rapidly that he suddenly decided to change his will 3 months ago. I pulled out another document from my briefcase. You see, I've been watching you both very carefully since the day you married my father, Victoria. I saw how you isolated him from his old friends, how you gradually took control of his medication, his diet, his entire life. And I documented everything. The lawyer, who had been watching this exchange with poorly concealed fascination, spoke up. Ms. Winston, are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, I interrupted smoothly. I'm stating facts. Facts that Detective Morrison at the fraud unit found very interesting when I shared them with him last week. Facts about certain substances found in my father's blood work. Facts about large transfers of money from company accounts to offshore entities controlled by Victoria and Marcus. Victoria's hand flew to her throat. You're lying. You can't prove. Actually, I can prove everything. I nodded to my assistant, who had been quietly recording the entire meeting, including your confession just now about my father's deteriorating health under your care. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate when my brilliant, vital father suddenly started showing signs of dementia just months after you took over his medical care? Marcus lunged forward, but security guards I'd stationed outside the door stepped in smoothly. You little bitch, he snarled. You set us up. No, Marcus. You set yourselves up. I just made sure there would be consequences. I turned to the lawyer. Mr. Patterson, I believe Detective Morrison is waiting outside with some colleagues. Would you please show them in? What followed was chaos. Victoria tried to run but was stopped by the security guards. Marcus attempted to delete something on his phone but was tackled by a detective. Within minutes, both were in handcuffs, facing charges of fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. I watched as they were led away, Victoria's mascara running down her face, Marcus still hurling threats and obscenities. The lawyer gathered his papers, shaking his head in amazement. Your father always said you were the smart one, he remarked. Now I see what he meant. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Years, actually, I corrected him. From the day Victoria married my father, I knew she was after his money. I just had to be patient, gather evidence, and wait for them to reveal their true colors. And the properties? That was your father's idea? I smiled, remembering the conversation 5 years ago. Dad was no fool. He saw what Victoria was, even if he hoped he was wrong. Transferring the properties to me was his insurance policy, his way of making sure the company would always be protected, no matter what happened to him. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. As news of Victoria and Marcus's arrest spread, more evidence of their crimes emerged. Former employees came forward with stories of threats and coercion. Financial audits revealed a complex web of fraud and embezzlement stretching back years. Victoria, it turned out, had a history of marrying wealthy men who subsequently developed mysterious illnesses. None had died until my father. That fact alone ensured she would never see freedom again. Marcus, facing the prospect of a lengthy prison term, quickly turned on his mother, revealing every detail of their schemes in exchange for a reduced sentence. Winston Industries survived the scandal, emerging stronger than ever under my leadership. The employees who had feared for their jobs under Marcus's brief tenure breathed sighs of relief when I announced that no one would be fired, except those who had actively participated in Victoria and Marcus's crimes. 1 month after the arrests, I sat in my father's old office, my office now, looking at his picture on the wall. He was smiling, his eyes clear and bright, the way they had been before Victoria entered our lives. You taught me well, Dad, I whispered. Always see the whole board, you said. Never make a move until you're sure of all the pieces. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Linda, our CFO, who had helped me gather evidence against Victoria and Marcus. The quarterly reports are in, she said, smiling. Profits are up 20% since you took over. Dad would be pleased, I replied, then noticed she was holding something else. What's that? A letter. From Marcus. She handed me the envelope. It was screened by security, of course. I opened it, reading Marcus's desperate plea for forgiveness, his claims that Victoria had manipulated him, his offers to testify against others involved in their schemes. At the bottom was a postscript. You may have won, but at least I got the company. I couldn't help but laugh. Even now, he didn't understand. The company had never been the real prize. It was the legacy, the people, the principles my father had built it on. Victoria and Marcus had seen Winston Industries as nothing but a cash cow to be milked dry. I saw it as what it truly was, a responsibility, a trust, a future to be protected and nurtured. Taking out a piece of paper, I penned a short reply. Dear Marcus, you're right. You got the company. But I got everything that matters. Enjoy your new accommodations. I hear prison food is quite different from the Harvard dining hall. As I sealed the envelope, my phone buzzed with a text from Detective Morrison. Victoria's pleading guilty. Life sentence, no possibility of parole. Thought you'd want to know. Justice, I reflected, sometimes comes not in dramatic confrontations, but in quiet, careful planning. In seeing the whole board, and being willing to wait for exactly the right moment to make your move. Victoria and Marcus had played their game, but they'd never understood that they weren't the only ones who knew how to play. They'd thought the game was over when they got my father to change his will. They never realized that was just the beginning of their end. The next morning, I called an all-hands meeting in the company auditorium. Looking out at the sea of faces, the people who had worked alongside my father for years, who had helped me gather evidence against Victoria and Marcus, who had kept the company running through all the chaos, I felt a surge of pride. Winston Industries was built on 3 principles, I began. Integrity, innovation, and family. For a while, we lost sight of those principles. But today, we return to them. Today, we begin a new chapter. The applause was deafening. As I outlined my plans for the company's future, expanded benefits for employees, new research and development initiatives, community outreach programs, I could almost feel my father's presence, his approval. Later that day, I visited him at the cemetery, placing fresh flowers on his grave. We did it, Dad, I said softly. We protected your legacy. Not just the company, but everything you stood for. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and I smiled, remembering something my father used to say. Success isn't about having the most money or the fanciest degree. It's about seeing what others miss, planning what others don't, and protecting what truly matters. Victoria and Marcus had never understood that. They saw the company's value in dollars and cents, in profit margins and stock prices. They never saw its true worth in the lives it touched, the families it supported, the dreams it made possible. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with another text from Detective Morrison. Found Victoria's other victims. 3 more families coming forward. This is bigger than we thought. I wasn't surprised. People like Victoria and Marcus never stop at just one scheme, one victim, one betrayal. They keep going until someone stops them. I was just glad I could be that someone, not just for my father, but for all the others they had hurt or would have hurt. The sun was setting as I drove back to the office, casting long shadows across the Winston Industries building. My building, in more ways than one. Marcus might have gotten the company on paper, but I had everything that made it worth having. The trust of the employees, the respect of the industry, and most importantly, the satisfaction of knowing I had honored my father's legacy the right way. Sometimes, I mused, the best revenge isn't in confrontation or humiliation. It's in quiet competence, in careful planning, in being smarter and more patient than your opponents think possible. Victoria and Marcus had thought they were playing chess while everyone else played checkers. They never realized they were the pawns all along. And as for that online business degree they had mocked, it had taught me something no Harvard MBA could. That success isn't about the credentials on your wall, but the principles in your heart and the intelligence in your mind. The security guard nodded as I pulled into my parking space, the one that used to have Marcus's name on it. Evening, Ms. Winston. Everything okay? I smiled, thinking about Victoria in her prison cell, Marcus trading his designer suits for prison orange, and all their careful schemes lying in ruins around them. Yes, Henry, I replied. Everything is exactly as it should be. Because sometimes justice comes not with a bang, but with a carefully executed plan. Sometimes the best victories are the ones your opponents never see coming until it's too late. And sometimes, just sometimes, an online business degree and a lot of patience can outsmart all the Harvard MBAs in the world. Victoria and Marcus had thought they were writing the end of my story. Instead, they had only succeeded in writing the end of theirs. And as I sat down at my desk, my father's desk, I couldn't help but smile at the irony of it all. They'd wanted everything, and ended up with nothing. I'd appeared to lose everything, only to end up with it all. Because while they were busy counting their chickens, I was busy protecting the entire farm. That's the thing about real success. It's not about what you can grab, but what you can build. Not about what you can steal, but what you can protect. Not about what you can destroy, but what you can preserve. My father understood that. Now, so did I. And Victoria and Marcus? Well, they had about 20 years in federal prison to figure it out. Sometimes the best lessons come from our worst experiences. Victoria and Marcus had taught me more than any business school ever could, about patience, about vigilance, about the importance of seeing the whole board. Those lessons would serve me well as I led Winston Industries into the future. A future they had tried to steal, but had only succeeded in securing for me, for the company, and for my father's true legacy. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and I was more than happy to assist. After all, as my father always said, the best revenge is massive success. And nothing says success quite like watching your enemies' schemes crumble while your careful planning pays off perfectly. Victoria and Marcus had thought they were writing a story about their triumph. Instead, they had merely played their parts in mine. And as any good chess player knows, sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. They'd gotten the company, but I'd gotten everything else. And in the end, that made all the difference. Because while they were busy celebrating their apparent victory, I was busy ensuring their ultimate defeat. That's the thing about real power. It's not in what you appear to have, but in what you actually control. And while Victoria and Marcus had been focused on the obvious prize, I had secured the foundation it all stood on. Sometimes the best victories are the ones that come not from fighting, but from watching your opponents defeat themselves. Victoria and Marcus had been so busy celebrating their win that they never saw their loss coming until it was too late. And that, perhaps, was the sweetest victory of all. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.